War and sports don't usually go hand in hand, but in 1969, a World Cup qualifying match between El Salvador and Honduras did more than just determine who moved on to the tournament. It helped ignite a war. Yes, an actual war, with planes, tanks, and thousands dead. It's known as the Football War or the 100-Hour War, and while soccer was the spark, the fire had been building for years. To understand how a soccer match could lead to war, you have to know what was already brewing between El Salvador and Honduras. Land and population pressures. El Salvador, the smaller of the two countries, had a rapidly growing population and limited land. Tens of thousands of Salvadorans had migrated to Honduras in search of farmland. But Honduran elites and landowners didn't like that. Land reform in Honduras. In the late 1960s, Honduras began pushing a land reform program, one that targeted undocumented Salvadoran immigrants, evicting thousands from their homes and farms. This created major tension between the two countries, with immigrant expulsions, violence, and rising nationalist rhetoric on both sides. By 1969, the air was thick with resentment. And then came the soccer. The two countries were scheduled to face each other in World Cup qualifiers in June 1969. The first match was held in Tegucigalpa, Honduras. Honduras won, but the game was ugly. Reports emerged of violence against the Salvadoran team, jeering fans and rocks thrown at buses. But the second match, just days later in San Salvador, was worse. Salvadoran fans kept Honduran players awake all night by surrounding their hotel with blaring horns, shouting, and setting off fireworks. The match ended with a Salvadoran win, 3-0, and sparked riots. Several people were killed. Honduran immigrants in El Salvador were attacked. Tensions had exploded. Just 2 weeks later, on July 14, 1969, El Salvador launched a military offensive against Honduras. Airstrikes, ground invasions, and a full-blown war began. They claimed they were protecting their citizens from persecution in Honduras. The world watched in shock. A World Cup match had turned into a shooting war. It wasn't a small skirmish either. There were armored vehicles, fighter planes, and civilian casualties. Hundreds died. Thousands were displaced. Infrastructure was destroyed on both sides. It lasted just 100 hours, a little over 4 days, but the damage was deep. A ceasefire was eventually brokered by the Organization of American States. El Salvador withdrew its troops, but relations between the two countries remained frozen for over a decade. In total, around 2,000 people died, mostly civilians. The war didn't solve anything. It worsened the refugee crisis and destabilized the region. And as bizarre as it sounds, the name Football War stuck. Because while land disputes and immigration policies lit the fuse, it was a soccer game that struck the match. It's one of the strangest chapters in modern history. A war remembered not for its politics, but for its kickoff. So the next time someone says it's just a game, remind them that once it wasn't. This is Minutes of History, bringing you the stories that are too weird to forget.